The morning of my daughter Lily's 8th birthday, I was up at 5. Streamers on the ceiling, butterfly cake in the fridge, mason jar scavenger hunt in the backyard. My parents weren't coming. My mother, Carol, said my father, Roger, had a cardiology follow-up that couldn't be moved. She said it twice, which is how I know she rehearsed it. I'd spent my whole life being the daughter who adjusted. The one who said, of course, before the other person finished the sentence. That isn't a personality. That's a survival skill you develop when one child gets everything and you get leftovers with a lecture about gratitude. A white box arrived by UPS around noon. My mother's handwriting on the label. Pink tissue paper poking through the seam. I set it on the present table and went back to frosting cupcakes. I had no idea that a $9 embroidery job was about to crack open 3 years of lies. Lily pulled out a pink cotton dress. She pressed it against her chest and twirled. Then she stopped. Her small fingers traced the embroidery on the inside collar. "What is this, Mommy?" I crossed the room. I took the collar between my fingers and read the name stitched there in white cursive thread. Not Lily. Emily. My missing sister's name, sewn into a brand new dress, size for an 8-year-old, sent by my parents for my daughter's birthday. At the bottom of the box was a card in my mother's loopy handwriting. "For our little Emily, with all our love." My hands were shaking. I kept my face still. Lily was watching me with that expression children get when they sense something is wrong but can't name it yet. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and typed one message to my mother. Short, measured. "Mom, why does Lily's dress say Emily?" I put the phone face down and went to bed. I didn't sleep. By 6 in the morning, 11 missed calls. 6 from my mother, 5 from my father's phone, which meant my mother using his after hers went to voicemail. I let them ring. My whole life, I'd picked up by the second ring. Carol had trained me to be available the way you train something with repetition in the quiet threat of disappointment. Not answering felt like holding my breath underwater. Uncomfortable. Disorienting. But clarifying. When I finally picked up, she was already steering toward a landing she'd rehearsed overnight. "It's just a name we've always loved, sweetheart, a family tradition." "Emily isn't a family name," I told her. "It's a person's name." A specific person, she recalibrated. I could hear it, the breath, the pause, the new angle clicking into place. "You're reading too much into this, Myra. You always do this. You take something simple and turn it into a whole investigation." That word, investigation, I filed it. Then she shifted gears the way she always did when a conversation got too close to something real. "Your father needs his prescription picked up, by the way. Could you?" I told her I'd handle it, and I hung up. I'm a CPA. I handle audits for a living. I read other people's financials and flag the things they hoped nobody would notice. 3 days later, when the next money call came, Roger needed an echocardiogram. The copay was $400. I did something I should have done 2 years earlier. I opened the insurance portal. The supplemental plan I had been funding at $400 a month covered specialist visits at 90%. The real copay for an echocardiogram under that plan was $42, not $400. 42. I opened a fresh spreadsheet. In the last 12 months alone, beyond the mortgage autopay and the insurance, I had sent my parents just over $23,000. Carol had attributed every dollar to Roger's heart, house repairs, or property taxes. I pulled the county records. Property taxes paid in full on time for 3 years. The money was going somewhere, just not where she said. By 10 o'clock that night, I had 3 columns, money sent, what Carol said it was for, what I could actually verify. The gap between columns 2 and 3 was $41,000 across 3 years. Daniel set down his Allen wrench and looked at the page. How bad? 41,000. He didn't whistle. He just nodded slowly, like a man confirming something he'd suspected for years. "You need to go over there," he said. "And Myra, check that room." He meant the door at the end of the hallway. Emily's old bedroom. The one that had been locked or closed every visit for 3 years. The one my mother had nearly knocked Lily over to keep her away from at Thanksgiving. I drove to their house on a Wednesday morning when I knew they'd be at Roger's physical therapy. I let myself in with the spare key under the ceramic fraud by the side door, the same fraud that had been there since I was 9. I walked upstairs past the framed school photos, Emily's large and centered, mine smaller, tucked to one side. and I put my hand on the knob at the door at the end of the hallway. It turned. The lavender comforter was still smoothed hospital tight. The yearbooks were still stacked on the desk. But the closet door was open and the light was on. The closet was full in a way it hadn't been before. Emily's old clothes were pushed to one side. In their place, stacked neatly on the floor, were 4 cardboard boxes. I pulled out the first one. Inside, folded in tissue paper, were children's clothes, size for a girl between 6 and 10. Dresses, cardigans, a pair of Mary Janes still in the shoebox. Every single item had the same embroidery on the collar or the tag. Emily. These weren't keepsakes from my sister's childhood. The tags were current. The sizes were current. Someone had been buying children's clothing in Emily's name, in sizes that fit Lily for a long time. The third box had no clothes. Inside was a manila folder thick with papers. Zelle transfers printed on plain white paper, each one showing a payment from my parents' bank account to a recipient in Reno, Nevada. The name on the receiving end, Emily Brandt. Amounts ranging from $300 to $800, some months 2 transfers. The oldest receipt was dated 3 years ago, 2 weeks after Emily's "Don't for me" text. The most recent was last month. Every dollar matched the timeline of Carol's calls to me. Every fake copay. Every phantom water heater. Every trembling "your father's heart can't wait." At the bottom of the folder, paper clipped to the last receipt, was a handwritten note in my mother's cursive. "Don't tell Myra, she wouldn't understand." I sat on the floor of my sister's shrine and did the math. 36 months of transfers, average of $580 per payment, sometimes twice a month. The total came to just over $38,000. $38,000 of the $41,000 I couldn't account for. The gap closed with a sound like a bone snapping. My parents hadn't been struggling. Roger's heart was real, but the bills were covered because I covered them. The house was fine because I paid the mortgage. The phone worked because I funded the plan. Every extra dollar Carol squeezed for me had gone to Emily in Reno for 3 years. They knew where she was. They had always known. The grief, the locked bedroom, the performance on the phone. It was theater, staged for an audience of 1. Me. The reliable daughter. The fixer. The one who would keep writing checks as long as she believed her father was dying and her sister was gone. I heard the front door open downstairs. Carol was at the bottom of the stairs when I came down. She looked at me, then past me at the hallway, at the door I'd left slightly ajar, and her face went through something. Not panic. Recognition. The expression of a woman who had been waiting for this moment and had already rehearsed her way through it. "You went in Emily's room," she said. "Not a question." I did. She pressed her lips together and sat down on the bottom step like she was settling in for a conversation she'd been planning for years. What she said next stopped me cold. The clothes weren't for Emily, she told me. They were for Emily's daughter. Lily could be our second chance. She said it with the calm certainty of someone who had lived inside a delusion so long it had become load-bearing. Emily would come back, she said. Lily was the right age, had Emily's eyes. She needed to see that they kept her place, hadn't forgotten. Roger stood in the doorway. He didn't speak. His eyes were red. He gripped the doorframe like it was the only thing holding him upright. He knew. He had always known. I picked up my bag and walked past both of them without a word. That night, I built the file. Not a diary, not a grievance list, a proper reconciliation, the kind I would submit to a client whose CFO had been skimming. Every outgoing transfer highlighted. Every insurance claim cross-referenced against Carol's requests. The pattern was surgical. Every time she called with a new expense, the real cost was a fraction of what she quoted. The surplus went to Reno. 23 pages. Tabbed. Color-coded. Labeled Brandt Family Reconciliation. Then I started canceling. Mortgage autopay terminated. Supplemental insurance removed. Their phone lines dropped from my family plan. The co-signed loan flagged for resolution. Every cancellation documented dates, confirmation numbers, screenshots. This wasn't revenge. It was what I would advise any client who discovered a financial dependent had been diverting funds. Cut the exposure. Document the action. Prepare for the conversation. Carol had called the Sunday dinner a get-together. She'd framed it to the relatives as a long overdue family meal. Nothing dramatic. But I knew the choreography. Grandma Ruth. Aunt Diane. Uncle Pete, two cousins to fill the seats and provide the ambient pressure of an audience. She wanted me surrounded by people who had already heard her version. She was counting on me to fold, to sit quietly while the table turned against me, the way I had sat quietly my entire childhood while Emily got the spotlight and I got the responsibility. She didn't know I'd changed the math. I ironed the pink dress, folded it into a canvas tote alongside the 23-page file, and drove to their house at 6. I walked in, carrying the tote over my shoulder. Carol met me at the door with a hug so tight it felt like a tourniquet. She'd made pot roast. She lit the candles. She served cobbler. It was a master class in establishing normalcy before dropping the hammer. When she finally turned to the table with her folded hands and her rehearsed voice, she told everyone I had stopped helping, that Roger was 67 with a heart condition, and I had walked away over a misunderstanding about a dress. She looked at me with an expression calibrated to project hurt without hostility. I'd seen that expression 1,000 times. I reached into the tote bag. I set the folder on the table first. Then I unfolded the dress slowly and laid it flat beside the cobbler, collar facing up, white cursive visible to everyone in the room. "This is the dress my parents sent my daughter for her 8th birthday, I said, my voice low and even. "The name on it is not my daughter's name. My daughter's name is Lily." I opened the folder and turned it toward the table. In the last 36 months, I sent my parents just over $41,000 for my father's heart. For the house, for emergencies. $38,000 of that was transferred to Emily in Reno, Nevada, where she has been living for 3 years. My parents knew where she was the entire time. Diane's hand went to her mouth. Ruth closed her eyes. Carol stood up so fast her chair hit the wall. "You had no right," Carol shouted. "You went through Emily's room. You had no right to touch her things." Diane stared at the dress. "Those are children's clothes, Carol. Size for when she comes back." Carol's voice cracked and climbed. "She is my baby. I was keeping her place. I was making sure she had something to come home to." "With my money?" I said. "You were always jealous." She spun toward me, tears running, finger pointed. "From the time you were 5 years old, you couldn't stand that Emily was special, that she was mine in a way you never," she stopped. But the sentence was already in the room. Ruth set her hands flat on the table. Her voice came out thin and hard, like a wire pulled taut. "Sit down, Carol." Carol sat. Because Ruth was 86 and still the only person in the family who could make Carol Brand obey a 2-word sentence. Then Roger spoke. The first words he'd said all evening. He was staring at the dish of cobbler like it held the last 30 years of his marriage. "I knew," he said. "I knew she was sending the money. I knew about the clothes. I let her do it because I was too tired to fight." He paused. "I'm sorry, Myra. I waited for more. There wasn't any. I stood up. I did not raise my voice. I'm not going to yell," I said. "I'm not going to threaten or make demands. I'll tell you what's already done." I looked at Carol, then at Roger. "The mortgage auto pay is canceled. The insurance is dropped. Your phone lines are off my account. The co-signed loan is flagged for resolution." Carol made a sound, half gasp, half moan. "I don't hate you," I continued. "You can send Emily every dollar you earn. That's your choice. But you will not use my money to fund it. And you will not use my daughter to replace the child you lost." I picked up the folder. I left the dress on the table. "Let them look at it. Let them read the name. Love Emily all you want," I said from the doorway. "You will not rebuild her out of my child." Ruth nodded once. Diane wiped her eyes. Carol said nothing. For the first time in my life, my mother had nothing to say. I drove home under a sky just starting to go dark. My hands were steady. My breath was even. It was the quietest drive of my life. And I don't think I had ever been more awake. A month later, Lily started 2nd grade. She wore a new dress on the first day, yellow cotton, white buttons, her name stitched on the inside collar in blue thread, Lily. I had ordered it myself. She ran her finger over the embroidery before putting it on and grinned at me like it was the best thing she'd ever owned. "It says my name," she said. "It does, baby. It always will." Cutting them off didn't make me the villain in my family's story. It made me the author of my daughter's.